Okay, so quick review on The Sun King by David Dimbleby. So I listened to this on Audible. I think it's exclusive to Audible at the minute. Looked really popular, gets a lot of good reviews. I think 4.5 stars, if not possibly 5 actually. I think there's about 900 reviews on there so far, so it didn't come out that long ago. So really good, really highly recommended. I think anything to do with sort of Rupert Murdoch and tabloid press and the influence they've had historically and politically and stuff is really quite significant. So I just wanted to have a listen to this and sort of find out a bit more about something that I've sort of already felt that I knew a little bit about. It's really well produced, really well put together. David Dimbleby is, goes without saying, he's fantastic as the narrator. He's got a great voice, he's brilliant in that sort of thing. The way it's produced is really good as well. There's good music kind of edited into it, which makes it feel a bit more atmospheric. They've got some really good, interesting interviews with people who knew and worked with Murdoch and have done over the years, still do, I think, some of them. People who were involved at the picket lines at Wapping and things like that. So it starts off with Murdoch coming to Britain in 1968. David Dimbleby met him, spoke to him, talks about how he was quite young, quite good looking at the time, but he also says that he was quite quiet and kind of had a bit of a sort of edge to him, which was quite interesting. It starts off with him kind of taking over the Sun and turning it into something that he considered to be what the people wanted. So big, bold, sort of brash headlines, the design of the Sun logo. The guy who designed it talks about, the fact that he designed it and showed it to him and that Murdoch was really pleased with it, just big and bold, as we all know, the famous Sun logo. Then talks about him going to New York in the 70s, and the descriptions of New York is really interesting, really sort of, again, atmospheric, and David Dimbleby talks about how the fact that it was like the Wild West back then, that he saw someone being held up in a doorway with a gun, and people were just sort of walking by as if nothing was really happening. It was just sort of normal. They just talk about being a really different time, a really different place back then. Then it was the Son of Sam during 1977, I think. I could be wrong. I'll edit that in if that's wrong afterwards. But Son of Sam murders this guy who was kind of targeting teenagers in their cars at the time. And Murdoch and the New York Post, which he took over, he was really excited by this. It made great headlines. It sold a lot of papers. And he talks about someone Dunleavy, who was an Australian journalist, I think. I'll correct that afterwards if I'm wrong. Who was his kind of like his best journalist, and he got involved with it all. And he talks about how important he was, and apparently he died, I think, last year in his 80s. But I think he gives a bit of an account in the Audible as well, which is really good. They then, after the New York stuff, they then talk about the time that Murdoch took on the unions with Wapping and the picket lines and changing the printing press forever. All the people that were out of jobs and upset, and he talks to one of the guys who was protesting at the time. And that guy talks about how he's still really bitter and angry about it now, and understandably, and he sort of talks about how he kind of defaces newspapers when he gets a chance, just to sort of, if he can do anything to kind of get back at them to some extent. He just feels so angry about it still. So Murdoch, obviously, he's had a huge influence. He's done a lot of damage to a lot of people over the years. They talk about the fact that he helped the Labour government get in, Tony Blair, sort of leveraging the Sun, getting the Sun on his side, and how newspapers and the tabloid press, it was so important to have them on side if you wanted to get in, politically. Talking about how influential they are, how sort of potentially dangerous that is, how wrong that is really. And then there was the Baby P scandal, of course, where the lady who was the head of children's services, social services, children's services in East London, she basically got made a complete scapegoat of, and was fired on live by, what's his name, that Labour politician, I can't remember his name now, I'll edit it in afterwards. And just how terrible a time she was put through it all, and the papers obviously there just backing up the politicians, just doing what they want. Then there's a telephone scandal, the hacking scandal, all the people who were hacked, we all know about that. The only thing that I was a little bit disappointed was the fact that I wanted a bit more information as to what Murdoch's influence is, what he's kind of doing now, today, in the present day. And they sort of talk about, they sort of question that in the audio. I suppose there's no real way of knowing that yet. I suppose it tends to come out naturally a few years later, doesn't it? But yeah, I was hoping to learn a little bit more about sort of recent times, and they were just sort of saying how, you know, he's in his 80s now, he hasn't got a lot longer to go, you know, how much further is his power gonna spread, and then there's his son there ready to sort of take up the mantle as well. But yeah, it's really interesting. Like I say, really well done, really good interviews, good music, well put together. It's pacey. I think each chapter is sort of roughly 30 minutes or something, so you get through it nice and quickly. I got through it in no time at all, really. Yeah, I'd probably give it another listen at some point here and there, certain parts of it. They talk about Fox News and the influence of getting Trump into power and stuff as well, so some crazy stuff, really, when you think about it. And I would recommend you kind of do a bit of research on Murdoch and stuff as well afterwards, just to sort of back it up a little bit. But yeah, really well done, really interesting. I think it's definitely worth the good reviews. It's definitely worth your time, I would say. Like I say, for me, I got through it in less than a couple of days. Just sort of, it was over the Christmas holidays, just sort of pottering around doing a few things, just listening to it at the same time. I mean, that's the joy of audiobooks. You can get on with stuff and kind of listen at the same time quite often, as long as it's something not too deep and kind of challenging. But yeah, this is perfect for that. So yeah, really good book, The Sun King, David Dimbleby, on Audible.